everyone. Please accept my respects. It's so nice to come into your homes. I know the COVID has been restricting for everyone, but New Vrindavan, we've been open the whole time. So, and right now we probably have 300 people up at the temple. We're a very busy weekend this weekend. So being steady in life. He actually gave me a few topics: being steady in life, how I came to Krishna consciousness, developing unflinching love for Srila Prabhupada, having full faith in ISKCON, and remaining steady despite all the ups and downs. So I'm going to kind of touch on all of those things. So being steady in life. I looked up the word steady. Of course, there's so many meanings, but firmly fixed, not varying throughout a course. That's the meaning of some of the meanings of steady. So what's the easiest way to become steady? To have a great example of someone who's steady. And that was Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was extremely steady in everything he did. He was extremely fixed. He was not at all whimsical. Prabhupada followed a very regulated schedule, his habits of eating, his lifestyle, his giving classes, what he ate, everything was very regulated. Srila Prabhupada was a perfect example. When you're raised in America, life, of course, you're in America, so you have some idea, but when you're raised in America and, you know, go to school in America, there's no regulation. Basically, people, as they say, you do whatever feels good. There's some regulation, but nothing like Srila Prabhupada exhibited. So when we met Srila Prabhupada, we had a perfect example of how to be regulated and how to be steady in life. Prabhupada would eat the same things in the morning. He would eat fruit, depending on where he was and the weather, fruit and yogurt. He would have the same thing for lunch almost every day. He had his cooker, and he would cook dal, rice, 2 sabjis, and they would make chapatis. Prabhupada was not whimsical. So when you find somebody who's so fixed and steady in their life, it just paves the way for that type of lifestyle, which is our great fortune, actually. So I was looking at some of the things Prabhupada said about being steady. In a BTG from 1944, Prabhupada says, a pure devotee is not afraid of anything. In all circumstances, he keeps himself fit and steady. And in the Bhagavad Gita in 6:17, he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So Srila Prabhupada was someone who could show by his example. That's what founder acharya means. He's someone who sets the example, speaks the example, and lives the example. And then I was looking at a little farther. In a lecture, Srila Prabhupada was saying, do not be attached with profit and loss of anything, but you simply do your duty. You don't care for the success or failure. And if you are, I mean to say steady, either in success or failure, that is called yoga. That is called yoga. Don't mind for success or failure. Don't act on behalf of act on behalf of the Supreme Lord. And if you are steady in that position, then your working in spiritual platform is successful. So as conditioned souls, we're wandering, basically following our senses, right? We don't know what's to be done, what's not to be done. And then we come across someone like Srila Prabhupada. And not only is he steady, but Krishna is also steady. Krishna gives a life by his own example of how to live. And then all the teachings, it gives us that direction over and over and over again in so many different ways, in so many different verses, in so many different stories about living a regulated life, not running after our sense gratification, and acting in a certain mode of life. So mostly people are in the mode of ignorance and passion, right? So the people that Prabhupada preached to were extremely in the mode of ignorance and passion. I mean, you would have had to live in the situation to understand how deep people can be under the modes of material nature, not knowing what's to be done, thinking anything is okay, maybe not violence, but anything to do with your senses. Any type of sense gratification is okay. If it feels good, do it. But Krishna and Srila Prabhupada gave a different picture, right? So many times, be regulated, sadhana, right? You start off in the mode of ignorance and passion, and what's a next step up? Becoming into the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada started off by elevating people a little to the mode of goodness. He didn't do it in a harsh way. He didn't do it in a strict way. If you remember the stories of like Shamasundar, he was still smoking cigarettes. He'd been in Prabhupada's personal association for some time, but he was still smoking cigarettes. So much so to the point where he was carving the deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev in San Francisco. And his cigarette pack was on the head of the deity. Prabhupada walked in and he hit it off the head of the deity. He told him he should cut down one cigarette at a time. So Prabhupada was very careful. It was like handling with kid gloves or taking care of children. You want to be extremely careful because he didn't want anyone to go away. He really wanted people to make some advancement. So from the mode of ignorance and passion, he was raising the devotees just a little at a time to the mode of goodness. We had no deities. We had no books. We had some Back to Godhead magazines that came periodically. But Prabhupada had just printed the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita when I showed up on the scene. And, that was it. We really didn't have much. Fortunately for me, the person who was the temple president of the little temple I had moved into was a scholar who had been Prabhupada's secretary, who had some of Prabhupada's books. So he was reading to us from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavat, before Prabhupada put out the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But in the different modes of nature, you can see in the Bhagavad Gita, there's so much. Bhagavad Gita is such a perfect literature. I give tours at the palace. I gave some tours today, and there's a picture of the changing bodies. And the people, the Indian people, they have some idea, of course, of karma, that you're not this body, that the soul's eternal. But when the Westerners come, it's a perfect picture for preaching. They have no idea, maybe a little. They're a soul, but they don't understand what that means. But the changing bodies picture, you tell the story and then you explain to them that they're not this body. But the Bhagavad Gita itself, you have the three modes of material nature, right? It gives us an idea of what we're dealing with. So Krishna says, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it just frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So in trying to elevate the disciples that Srila Prabhupada had acquired, he had to carefully take them out of the modes of ignorance and passion and try and help them get into the mode of goodness. How can you be steady in life if you're not in the mode of goodness? right? Because what passion and ignorance, the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruit of actions, right? O son of Bharat, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned souls. So how do you be steady in life when you're deep in the dark mode of ignorance? You just want to sleep. People sleep for 12 hours, easily. They stay up all night, they go to the clubs, they're drinking, they're doing all kinds of nonsense. How do you be steady in anything in that condition? Just intoxication is enough to make people lose their footing in life. Intoxication is so powerful, and the whole world is just under the sway of intoxication, whether it's drugs, alcohol, caffeine, cigarettes. It's just a madhouse. But the mode of goodness, if you can raise yourself to the mode of goodness, which is what Prabhupada was doing, raising the devotees to the mode of goodness, then there's some chance that they can find a civil life to go forward and then hopefully make some progress spiritually. Because if you're in a drunken situation, in the mode of ignorance, or just a passionate person with unlimited desires, you got to go shopping, you have to buy this, you have to buy that, you need this, you got to go here, you got to go there. Oh, how do you make any progress? How do you be steady in life? You're just pulled by the modes of material nature, right? So to be steady in life, you follow the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings and the example of Srila Prabhupada. It's just so simple. And that's one of the reasons why Prabhupada wanted the books distributed. People don't have any idea what they're dealing with. All they know is what they see, mainly on the TV, on their computer, on their phones, games. The poor people are just like banging their heads in the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, little mode of goodness, maybe. Just you go into a grocery store, what do you see? So much mode of ignorance. Food that's stale, it's old, it's been processed and created months ago. How do you find that in the mode of goodness? It's not. So people are eating in the mode of ignorance and passion. They're listening to music and sound vibration, the mode of ignorance and passion. So how can they be steady? Well, we have a good fortune. Krishna's telling us, Prabhupada's telling us, our spiritual master's telling us, raise yourself to the mode of goodness, give up the mode of passion and ignorance, and then you can become steady in life. It's so practical, and it's so simple. It really is a simple process. It's just that we in ourselves are so complicated, having delved into the different modes of nature, that we have a hard time staying in the mode of goodness. When there's an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruit of activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desires and hankering develop. When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kunti, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifest. Wow. It's just so much the time that we're in. Now here, jumping to the nectar of devotion, in the first stages of devotion in chapter 2. Now this sadhana bhakti, or practice in devotional service, may be divided into 2 parts. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. One has to follow these different regulative principles by the order of the spiritual master, or on the strength of the authoritative scriptures, and there can be no question of refusal. This is called vaidhi, or regulated. One has to do it without argument. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called Raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which By following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. So here, when we start off, we're getting out of the mode of passion, ignorance, getting into the mode of goodness. From goodness, we get into devotional service, right? And it's simple. At first, we start off as sadhana bhakti. We're not on the platform of pure love of God by any means. And the sadhana bhakti being regulated in our devotional activities is such an important part of life. You know, the bhakta, we have a small plant of devotion, and the watering process is our devotional service. Our sadhana is so important so that we can someday get to the point of Raganuga bhakti where we actually develop attachment. And that keeps us going. We're like walking on a tightrope. If someone walks, you have all these past that used to do it. They'd have to put a tightrope across the Niagara Falls, and someone would have a bar and they would walk across the falls. How did they do that? They did it by concentrating on the other side, concentrating on their destination. So that's what the Bhakta does. He concentrates on his destination. Sure, he's this and that, he's following a little this way, a little that way, but out of the order of the spiritual master or the scriptures, one follows the sadhana bhakti, and then he makes progress and he keeps his vision on the end goal. The end goal, we don't want to be connected with this body and this world. We want our place in Krishna's service. We want to become free from the encumbrance of the material creation. And that's what Krishna's come, Lord Chaitanya's come to give us, an opportunity, right? That's what so we keep our vision on the goal. And to do that, we remember the difficulties of the world. Prabhupada said one should be very pessimistic about this life. And we, like in the example of Yudhishthira, what is the most amazing thing within this world? The Yaksha asked Yudhishthira. The brothers couldn't answer. They drank the water. Yudhishthira came along. The Yaksha said, don't drink the water. It's my lake. You have to answer my questions. What's the most amazing thing? The most amazing thing, Yudhishthira said, is that people see death all the time around them. We see dead bugs. As soon as you turn on the computer, it's, my God, this death, that death, this murder, this death. It's like, whoa. But the living entity is always thinking that's somebody else. So if we keep somewhere in our mind that this body has a time limit, right? The alarm is going to go off at some point, and it's going to be time to say, as they say in Hawaii, sayonara means goodbye in Japanese. So sayonara, we leave this body and we leave all of our attachments. So to stay steady, we want to keep an eye on the goal, and at the same time remember that this world is temporary and is full of miseries. And but at the same time, we want to be joyful and we want to progress in the mode of goodness, which is it gives us happiness, and devotional service also gives us great relief and great happiness. So I was going to talk about how I came to Krishna consciousness. It's a simple story. I'm from Hawaii. My father was a manager of Dun & Bradstreet. I went there when I was 11, moved to Hawaii. We lived in a beautiful house overlooking the ocean. We had a new Cadillac every year. I drove a sports car when I was 15. My father was very strict, which was good. And, life was fine, but I wasn't satisfied. I just wasn't satisfied, You go to work, you come home, you drink a beer, you have a bar, you watch the football game. It's like, okay, this is life, must be more. But somehow or other, Krishna, made me want to find him. I wanted to find God somehow or other. So I left home and I went on a adventure. I got involved in things I shouldn't have, for sure. But I became a hippie. Through my little wanderings, I was looking for God. And I tried different kinds of meditation, and I got involved in things that hippies get involved in. At a certain point in time, I said, well, this is just too much. I was a meat eater. Of course, I was raised a meat eater. But Krishna was helping me, although I didn't know God is Krishna, of course. But I went into a butcher shop one day. I was like 18 or 19, and there was a cow's tongue on a plate with blood all around it. And I just, Krishna would just like, whoa, wake up. I just looked at that and I said, oh my God, that's a cow's tongue. What did they do to this cow? Oh my God, I like cows. I'm never going to eat meat again. So I just never ate meat again. It was so powerful. And Krishna seemed to be lifting me up. So I ended up taking no intoxication by a similar kind of realization. Of course, no gambling, no illicit sex life, by another big realization. And then I was living in Hawaii out in the country. And by Krishna's arrangement, he put me with I was renting a room from a woman who was like 40 years old, and I was like 19. And I had lost my interest in doing any nonsense. So I would go to work. I worked at this little restaurant out in the country. I'd hitchhike to work. And my possessions were like nothing. I had very little. So I'd go to work and I would come home and I would just meditate and try and understand God. And I would read. I read this Bhagavad Gita by the Swami somebody, and I was reading Buddha's teaching, Jesus' teachings, and I was getting very confused because they all say different things. The stories are all different. The conclusion may be the same, but not in every case. The Swami who I was reading the Bhagavad Gita from, his conclusion was that we were all God. And it was like, that doesn't make much sense. So I was getting really confused, and I laid down in my room and I prayed, my dear Lord, if you're here, please send me to somebody who knows you. And at that time, there was no Krishna consciousness in Hawaii. I had no idea who Krishna was. But the lady I was staying with, she got a poster in the mail from her son who lived in San Francisco. And she opened it up, and it was this blue boy with a cow and a deer sitting on a rock. And he wrote to his mom, dear mom, please chant Hare Krishna. I've just been initiated. My name is Munibunda. We had no idea what that meant. But Krishna, because I was looking for Krishna, like Prabhupada says, you take one step toward Krishna, he takes 10 towards you. So Krishna put me in the house of a woman whose son was my age, but lived in San Francisco, had just been initiated, but we didn't know what that meant. So there I was at her house after work or on the weekend, and I was following a certain diet. I was a vegetarian already, but I didn't know how to be a vegetarian. But I was following the mucusless diet healing system by somebody, Earhart, his name was. And in that, you don't eat sugar, you don't eat butter, you don't, it's like this diet thing. But I wanted an almond cookie that I used to eat all the time. I had to have an almond cookie. So I called my friend who had a car and said, please take me to the bakery. Now, I was living out in the country. There's no city out there, no town, just a little stretch of a few stores, a bakery that's about 20 feet by 20 feet. So he came and picked me up, took me to this little bakery in Sunset Beach. And on the bakery window, when I went in, there was a little paper like this. And it had a picture of a man in a graveyard, pondering life. And it said at the bottom, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna. And then it said Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Of course, I had no idea who that was. And I said, take me there, a Swami, take me there. So he drove me. It was just like a mile or two down the road. And we found the address, and it was an old Hawaiian house up on a hill. And there was a yard, it was in the country. So it had a field going up to the house and some cows and a windmill. And we drove up the driveway, and as we drove up the driveway, I got very apprehensive, like scared, but not scary scared, but apprehensive scared. And we parked, and I turned around and looked up, and there was an elderly gentleman in saffron telling us to come up. So I grabbed my apple juice and went up the stairs following him, and we went through this one room, and there was all the saffron cloth hanging. And then we went through a room that was the temple room, but it was just a room with a wire across it with a cloth hanging over it. And he went into his room, and he sat down behind his desk. And his desk was a piece of plywood, raw plywood, on some bricks. And he was so majestic and so beautiful and so elegant and so familiar. And it was almost, and he was the only one there. It was the first time they ever left him alone. Krishna is so kind. So I had so many questions because I'd been reading and trying to understand God. But I prayed, please send me to somebody who knows you. And Srila Prabhupada, I could see him looking into my mind. I could see him looking into my heart. And he started talking about God. And in the course of his conversation, he answered all of the questions that I had. And I never asked him anything. It was, to me, it was a miracle. It was amazing. And he was like finally meeting you, your best friend that you've been looking for. And then near the end, the devotees came back. They'd gone on a Harinam, and they were surprised to find somebody there. But Prabhupada's person, his persona, his effulgence, he was just, he commanded great respect without even knowing who he was or anything about Krishna consciousness. I put my head to the floor. It was just the thing to do. You know, Srila Prabhupada was a very powerful and beautiful and kind person. So somehow or other, I went back. He was only there for about 5 days. I went every day. I'd hitchhike out there, and he told me to bring my Bhagavad Gita that I was reading. And he went through my Bhagavad Gita. I was sitting near him, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you like me?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I just love you." Because he was just like so wonderful. And he started looking in my Bhagavad Gita, and he found something. And he said, do you see what he's done? He's taken Krishna's words, and in his conclusion, in his purport, he said exactly the opposite from what Krishna said. He said, Bhagavad Gita, you know, he was just saying the Krishnas spoke the Bhagavad Gita, and someone didn't have a right to give their own interpretation. So then he pulled out his Bhagavad Gita. I don't have a book. He pulled out his Bhagavad Gita. I have one, but not here. He pulled it out. He said, this is Bhagavad Gita as it is. It was the old original purple Macmillan or lilac colored Macmillan. He said, this is what Krishna said. This is what Krishna meant. And he said, would you like a book? And being a hippie and being in the cultureless culture I was in, I said yes, and I thought he was going to give it to me. I have to say that whatever Prabhupada said had just depths of knowledge. It wasn't, guru means heavy. Prabhupada was an extremely empowered pure devotee. He was not an ordinary pure devotee. He was a very empowered person to preach the way he did. So when he said something, it just put volumes of knowledge. So when he asked me if I wanted a book and I said yes, he sat back, he said, that will be $2.95. And it stunned me because I was thinking he was going to give it to me. You know, it's God. God should be free. But then when he said it, it was like, yeah, of course, it's a book. Someone had to print. There's money. Okay. I said, okay, I'll take 3. So I bought 3 books, 3 Bhagavad Gitas from Srila Prabhupada. And I went back and I gave them to friends. And I kept one. But I have to say, when I started reading, it was like, you know, when you wear glasses, you kind of can see something, but you can't really tell what it is. That's me trying to find God. It's like, okay, yeah, there's something there, but I can't. But Prabhupada came along and went, now do you see? And it was like, oh, yes, that's what Jesus meant. That's who Buddha was. That's what all these different philosophies and teachers, they've all come from Krishna. Well, not all of them, but the bona fide ones have come from Krishna at different times to give a different message, to lead the people in a spiritual path. It just, Prabhupada put the picture together. It was like, wow, that's what I was looking for. You know, I wanted answers, and Prabhupada had all the answers. I had no original intention of changing my Christian background. I had no intention of becoming a Hindu or wearing saris, or, you know, I wasn't looking for a change like that. I wanted knowledge, but Prabhupada gave me and all of us a way of life. You want to be steady in life? Here, this is it. Prabhupada gave us a life, you know, so it was easy. I had no desire to do anything else. I wanted to be with Prabhupada. And who would have known? When you're living in a temple, you have absolutely no money. The temple can hardly pay the rent. You're living by getting donations from the vegetable market or whatever. And in LA, you're eating off of wax paper. You know, who would ever think that the Hare Krishna movement, where Prabhupada's sitting at a desk of plywood, would become what it is today? Who would have thought? We didn't come to become famous or become rich or become anything. We were like children following Prabhupada. He had it all. He had the happiness, he had the peace, he had the knowledge, he had everything. And what else do you want? That's, you know, what more could anyone want? So all of us devotees from way back when, that we just, Prabhupada was like the Pied Piper. We just wanted to please Prabhupada. He gave us God in a very personal way. So one of the things I was asked to say how I came to Krishna consciousness, developing unflinching love for Srila Prabhupada. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I fell in love with Srila Prabhupada when I first met him. He was just the perfect person, the most down-to-earth, the most human person, and the most spiritual person at the same time. Prabhupada's kindness, his compassion, the depth of his care and love just emanated in everything he did. He was just, you know, someone that you could love. And it was so obvious the first day I met him. I had faith in Jesus, and I knew that that love that Jesus exhibited was on a different platform. When I met Srila Prabhupada, I could see Jesus right next to him. They had the same love for me. It wasn't they loved me because, you know, everyone you meet in the world, oh, I love you because you give me this, you give me that, you look like this, whatever. But because that's not love. But Prabhupada, the level of love he was on was, real. It was deep and it was spiritual. I have a picture and I don't remember what I did with it. It's a picture of me as a young girl with Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, I would go to the house while Prabhupada was there, and I went on the first Harinam that Prabhupada went on, and it was nothing like today. Today we have so much going on. We have so much facility in ISKCON. It's just nothing like, when we went on this Harinam, it was old beat up red truck. Old truck. And Prabhupada sat in the front with Govinda Dasi and Gursindar, and we sat in the back. And we went to this park out in the country, and they brought a harmonium, and Prabhupada, I don't know if they brought a harmonium, but Prabhupada chanted. There was a group of hippies, and he spoke. And I don't know if you know the devotee Mother Kausalya. She was one of the first devotees to go to India with Prabhupada. She was a very young girl at the time. That's when she came. She came from that beach kirtan. And we went back to the temple and we both sat and talked with Srila Prabhupada. But if you want to meet Srila Prabhupada, you read the Lilamrita, you look at Bhaktacharya's movie, you listen to the memories about Srila Prabhupada by the disciples. It's not that you can't have that connection with Srila Prabhupada. You can. It's not limited to a few people that met Srila Prabhupada back so many years ago. I know there was a story, I think his name was Hai. He was from Mexico, and he was going to Mexico with a little deity of Prabhupada. And he tried to go over the border, and the man at the border said, "You can't take that." He said, "Well, why not?" He said, "No, you can't take that. I'm going to keep that here." It's a little deity, a brass deity of Prabhupada. So he had to go into Mexico, so he left this little murti of Srila Prabhupada with this man. And the man just became somehow or other attached to this deity. He took it home. The family, they started offering things, flowers and things. And when Hai came back to cross the border to get his deity, the man said, "Please, can I please have this little statue?" Prabhupada is present. He's present in his books. He's present in the temples. But, you have to develop eyes, spiritual eyes. I know Prabhupada when he was in New York, he was in the Bowery, and there was, all kinds of drunks and everything. And the devotees were saying, "Oh, Prabhupada, we apologize for bringing you to this dirty place." He said, "What are you talking about?" He was seeing Vrindavan. So developing unflinching love for Srila Prabhupada, and then having full faith in ISKCON. What more could anybody want? When we go to Vrindavan, we can see either the filth, the sewers, the bad smell, the squalor, the poverty, or if we have the right eyes, we can see a transcendental place where Krishna had his pastimes and the cows roamed and the sand is beautiful and has Krishna's dust from his feet. It depends on our vision. So we can see, believe me, I've lived at a temple for over 50 years. In a temple or right next to a temple. I've been in New Vrindavan for almost 40 years. If you don't have a spiritual vision of ISKCON, you can see all kinds of faults. oh, the temple president's like this, and this happened, and why didn't they do that? And the deities don't have this on it. Why aren't they doing it like that? It's like you could just go mad. But if you have the right vision, you can see the transcendental abode of Krishna. And then everything else is superficial. It's like a thin covering. Even when you go to Vrindavan, Prabhupada said that. It's like a covering. Your eyes have to be tinged with love, the salve of love. And he also said, and this is a quote, if there is no following of the regulative principles, then after my death, it will be Galagraha, a burden, that our rascal Guru Maharaj established this temple, and we have to worship. Early rise in the morning, all botheration. Prabhupada said, this is called Galagraha, or burden. He has left us with a burden. So did he leave us with a burden? No, of course not. It's nothing but good fortune. But if we stray from the principles, if we stray from our sadhana, if we don't chant our rounds, it's so important. It's so purifying. We're not going to be able to see things as there actually are. We get covered over, and then things become a burden and bothersome. And, we get on this mundane platform. And I see it all the time. It's so easy to see when you're living in a temple, because, you can go outside and find fault, but when you're living in a temple, you have to be careful, because offenses also cover over our vision. I remember reading a letter when I was a brahmacharini. Prabhupada had written that there were 2 devotees that left Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said they thought they left on their own. He said, but they're offenses. He said, one, the temple president, and the head pujari are these people that were left. And he said one was offensive to the women and one was offensive to the children. And Krishna took their desire away. Offenses can really put a damper in our progress. So it's just so important. If we want to find that pure devotional service, we have to rid ourselves of the tendency to find fault. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he said, malice. He said, as long as we have malice in our heart, we can't enter the spiritual world. So it's our own journey. It's not like we have to please somebody else or do it for somebody else. It's our journey. And we take it however we take it. We want to take it slow, we can take it slow. We want to go fast, we can go fast. But we want to just keep going forward somehow or other. I know devotees who have left I know 2 devotees who have left for like 11 years. They met Prabhupada, they did a lot of service, and then somehow or other they fell down and went away. One didn't become inimical, one became inimical, even about Srila Prabhupada. But now he's back and he's all fired up and doing great things. People can fall down. It's just who we are. We're conditioned souls. But that doesn't mean we can't get back up and just keep on going. And the most protection is in the association of devotees, right? I have to say I am spoiled. I live in New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan is like, wow, what more could you want? The most beautiful deities. We have Lord Shringadev, we have Lord Jagannath, we have beautiful Radha Vrindavan Chandra, Gornitai, we have Nachi. We have the palace. The palace is, Prabhupada's presence there is so great. So you go, it's Labor Day week, our Memorial weekend, and we are very short-staffed. So the devotee Lakshman who runs our gift shop, which is a really good gift shop, and you can buy, he'll take you around the store with his phone. If you're interested in buying anything, he's probably got it or can get it. And he can take you around with his phone. So in the morning, I went to the temple, and then I went into the gift shop and helped there. And then I went up to the palace and I did tours for some time. And then I came back and I worked in the gift shop again. And then I went to the restaurant and helped serve out. It's like, where do you have time to get into anything else? It's like by the time you get home, you're just like, oh, I'm so tired. And then it's time to get up and start all over again. You know, it's a protection. I've had a wonderful life, I have to say. For me, it hasn't been hard to stay steady in my service. Also, the instruction, Prabhupada said, the instruction, the specific instruction of our spiritual master is what gives us strength. Prabhupada told me he said, you have understood this philosophy, now preach Krishna consciousness to the suffering humanity. He said to help spread Krishna consciousness. So that has been the two things that I do in my life. I help spread Krishna consciousness. To me, that means whatever needs doing at the temple, I'm in. Clean the bathroom, I'm in. Take care of the deities, I'm in. Decorate for weddings, I'm in. You know, and that's the reciprocation is there from within. I'm doing what Prabhupada asked me to do. And his potency and Krishna's pleasure is in that. And then to preach. I for years, I go to the palace and preach. I do tours. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity. But even if you don't live in a place like New Vrindavan, you can have a book table somewhere. Anuradha, she took a group. There was a lantern festival in Pittsburgh. A lantern festival, you know, the hot air, little lanterns you light and they go up into the air. So what did she do? She got a table, they made prasadam, they went there, they sold books and prasadam and lit lanterns. We just happened to have a whole box of lanterns and they had a wonderful evening and did kirtan. You know, it wasn't anything that was a Ratha Yatra. It was just a Karmi festival. And, you know, they had fun and they did preaching and, you know, I mean, if Prabhupada could come to the West with absolutely nothing at 70 years old, you know, we can certainly do something. It's just, we have so much facility. ISKCON is just a glorious situation. Everywhere we can go, so many, you can do anything in this world. There's so many devotees, so many things going on. I mean, in Hawaii, there was like 4 of us. That was it. We had no money. We had no books, you know, but that was the grassroots of ISKCON. And now there's just unlimited things to do. So I think I've over-talked my time. Is that right?
Not at all. Mataji, you can go on as long as you want. This is also encouraging, very nice. So focus on sadhana and the basics, very nice. But if you would like to stop here, then I totally respect it. It's up to you.
Well, I mean, what time did I start? I started at...
You started...
so it is a little longer than 45 minutes. I mean, I don't want to interrupt your schedule.
No problem at all. Okay, so that's all right. I'll just make a few quick announcements, Mataji, and then we can, you know, if you're all right, we'll just take some questions.
Sure, that's fine. I'm not in a hurry to do anything except go up to the restaurant and help them. Help in the gift shop.
Try to share my screen. So, the devotees, like a ritual each week, we share the programs coming up in the following week. This week we'll have this Wednesday we'll have the third session of the class Financial Stress by His Grace Vamshidhari Gopal Prabhu. It's been very, very knowledgeable so far. He's shared a lot of information. It's useful for our financial planning, budgeting, and so on. So kindly join back again. Same Zoom link at 8:30 on Wednesday. Next Sunday, we have Her Grace Nandini Devi Dasi Mataji. She's going to speak on Krishna's beauty, form, and pastimes. I've not heard Mataji, so looking forward again to that class. Same Zoom link. Uh, each week, as you all know, we have a story time for kids. Again, same Zoom link. It's at 8:30 in the evening, 8:30 to 9. I'm pretty sure most of the kids here, I mean, parents of kids, kids of parents here have been joining the story time for as long as we've had it. But if there's someone who hasn't, you know, whose kids are not, don't join the call and would like to, you know, have their kids join, it's the same Zoom link, 884, same Zoom link that you've joined in today with at 8:30. Please do so. Each Friday we have our Bhakti Vriksha night. There are several groups. If you would like to plug in into any of these groups, kindly contact us by clicking that button, and someone will give you information about where to join, how to join, based on your proximity to the place. Right now it's all online, but we can speak more about it later on. Sunday school, we're coming to the fag end of the year, but still, if anyone would like to enroll their kids for the coming year, or even have a few classes towards the end of this session, very few left, but kindly again let us know. We have Bhagavad Gita reading each every day for about 15 minutes between noon and 12:15. And last but not the least, we start our day with the japa for about 2 hours every day between 6 and 8. Very nice day to start, very nice way to start our day. So if you would like to plug in there, it's again the same Zoom link, 884. We'll be very happy if you join. And yeah, so that's about it. Again, hope you all are having a very good Memorial Day weekend thus far. Yes. So we'll open up the floor again, Mataji, for questions, and then if anyone wants to send their questions to me directly on chat, I will be very happy to read out those to Mataji. Or if you would like to raise your hand, that's fine too. Right, so we have one question in the chat box. Mataji, if you're ready. Yeah. This question is what is the message for young kids to establish steadiness in Krishna consciousness without fear or any reservation? And you joined yourself at a very prime age. So what's your experience been? And then were there any fluctuations on your path? And if so, then how did you come back, to Krishna consciousness?
So what age are they talking about? What?
I'm guessing this is, teenage kids.
Well, I mean,
14, 15, I guess.
I mean, everyone's circumstance is different. I was raised, in a certain way. And then there was several years when I did whatever I wanted, and then regretted doing whatever I wanted, and somehow or other started looking for something higher. If you kind of get worn out, you get materially exhausted is the word that's used in the Bhagavad Gita. You become materially exhausted, you look for an alternative. Krishna consciousness is an alternative. But when you're young, it's an individual thing. Some people are materially exhausted when they're a youth, and someone may be 14, 15 and still want to experience even not such good things. I mean, our children that were raised in the ashram here, unfortunately, our ashram had predators in it, and some of our children had some very bad experiences. But even in those circumstances, and they lived a very strict life. The ashram was like, because the teachers weren't qualified, and they were chosen because the good people, management wanted them to do something else. Our teachers were not high quality. So some of our children, when they got out of the Gurukula, when the Gurukula finally closed down, they just went wild. I think the Amish do that too. They tell their kids, you do whatever you want, and then after whatever a certain amount of time, you decide if you're going to come our way or if you're just going to go live however. So I know in the case of our children, I can cite one person. He was in the ashram. He was one of the older kids. He had a lot of difficulties in the ashram, and when he got out, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, nothing. He didn't even want to hear the name. And so he left here and he went to college. But while he was in college, he realized that the people that were around him had so little knowledge that they didn't know a tenth of what he knew from being in the ashram. He realized that what he had been given was such a gift that he knew about the soul, he knew about karma, he knew about life. And these kids didn't know anything because all they knew was television, games, bars. And so then he started to realize, hey, that wasn't a bad deal. I really am more advanced than these other people. And then what happened was one day this group of devotees came on his campus and they were on the stage doing some kirtan. And the guy that was playing the drum didn't do a very good job. And he was in the audience and he said, hey, you think I can try? And so the kid gave him the drum and he just, of course he knew how to play it. But it hit him so hard that what he was given wasn't a burden. It was actually such a benediction that he went on to be one of the leaders of the Gurukulis, the coolies. He was setting up all kinds of festivals, and Chaitanya Mangala is his name. And he was one of our corporate officers here in New Vrindavan for 8 years or something. He's a financial person now. His business, he's finance, so when it comes to young people, they are coming into being adults, right? They're going to make their own decisions. And you really have to be careful not to try and force Krishna consciousness on them. It's something that they need to want, that they need to develop. And I know that there was a family in Pittsburgh maybe 8 years ago, and they had a son, and he loved coming to the temple. He was like 7, then he was 10 and 12, and he would serve out, he would do all this stuff. And then when he got older and he finished high school and he went into college, his parents, I guess, were, always on him. Well, you got to do this. Don't forget to chant. You got to chant. They were just always on him. And the kid became so torn because I guess he felt what he was doing was wrong according to his parents. And, he's supposed to be dutiful. Anyway, he killed himself. It was like his parents just lost it. And they knew, the mother anyway, felt that she was responsible. It's like Advaita Acharya, you had Srinivasa Acharya, you have these great personalities. Some of their kids were great devotees and some of them weren't. They get to a certain point, they're going to have to decide. We decided. You give it to them. Prabhupada said, if a child is given Krishna consciousness in a loving way, even if they stray, they come back. And I know that in my own situation with my oldest son. He had a very difficult time in the Gurukula. And I won't go into details about that, but I am surprised that he was such a, but I think my own relationship with him and my own love for him, and I've never judged my kids, no matter what they've done. But you go to my kids' house, all of my kids, they have Krishna, they have Prabhupada, they have deities, they're not strict followers, they're not all chanting rounds, but they're devotees. My oldest son has Prabhupada's name, his signature, or tattooed around his arm. I have great respect for my children. And they feel that. And then they see my example, and it works. It just works. You don't force Krishna consciousness. You teach them, that you give them the base, and then they progress. But if you don't have that love, and I've been told by different mothers, please teach me, what did you do? Your children love you so much. They love you and they respect you, and I respect them, but I've never, and the kids who they love as a sannyasi is Radha Swami. He's never judgmental. They could tell him things that they couldn't, it's like that relationship is so important. Anyway, I hope that answered the question.
Yes, Mataji, yes. Thank you. Ram Tulsi Prabhu, if you want to go ahead and ask your question. Ram Tulsi Prabhu.
Sorry, bro, the kid was crying.
Okay.
Really, I believe, touched by how like the vision that you talked about, but really also touched about this positive spirit you have. You staying in the temples, doing the service for many years in Vrindavan, and so I just want to ask a question that, we are very much prone to negativity, and we are very influenced very easily. Even though there are so many positive things around us, we are being given through many things, but why it is that, we are so easily influenced by negativity, and how can we really change that shift, that gear, that where we can really look into the positivity much more than the negativity, so we can have that steadiness that I have. And even Srila Prabhupada, even so many his godbrothers, yeah, you cannot do it, you cannot make it just come back, but he had that mood. How can we have that? Thank you, Mati.
Well, the chanting and our devotional service is purifying us. There's no doubt about that. But also, it talks about the weeds of, the anarthas in the heart. So you're supposed to pull the weeds at the same time watering the plant, right? It's not just that you just chant Hare Krishna and everything's going to, you have to be part of the process of purification too, right? Don't make offenses. The 10 offenses against the holy name. It's not that they don't tell you just chant Hare Krishna and you'll naturally follow the 10 offenses. They give you the 10 offenses to be avoided, which means you are the one having to avoid it. It comes in your mind. Of course, it's one of the parts of our disease, fault finding. A pure devotee, he's free from the tendency to find fault. We're not. But when it comes into the mind, it doesn't have to come out through the mouth. And when you live in a community where you don't just go to work and see a few people and come home to a family, you go up and you see 50 people, and then you go here and there's another 10 people, and it's like you're constantly around other devotees. You may think something, but better to not express you know, I have people finding fault with the management, right? They come up and they start this whole conversation. I never get involved in a conversation like that. I know better, you know, I know better. I just turn the conversation around. Well, okay, so maybe they do that, but what about all this that they do? They're so good with this and they're doing all that. And, you know, it's like, don't bring up the things that they're not doing right to me. I don't want to hear it. You know, you just have to protect yourself, and eventually we won't have the tendency to find fault, but that's where we're at. We're fault finders, but we don't have to propagate that mentality. And you see someone, when has anyone ever heard Raghunath Maharaj find fault with somebody? You know, it's like, or could you imagine the six Goswamis sitting down and having a conversation? Hey, did you see that guy? He came here and look, he's a thief. And I don't know, you know, it's like, could you imagine? No, because they're free from that tendency. So we're not free, but we don't have to spew out all the poison, because then we start thinking about it. And then everyone we talk to is guaranteed. If you go up to somebody, a friend of yours, and you say, did you know that person's a thief? Guaranteed, whether he's a thief or not, the person that you told is going to have in the back of their mind that other person's the thief. And I've had people tell me, oh, did you know so-and-so did so-and-so? And now I've been an authority at the temple for management for, you know, years in the past. And then I've made the mistake of going to that person and saying, hey, why did you do this? You know, like, you shouldn't have done that. Well, what are you talking about? And then finding out the information I was given was totally wrong. You know, it's like, you have to be careful. I'm a very straightforward person. And if I act abruptly, I can put my foot in my mouth. So when I was the temple president here for some time, and it was like really a hard service, and New Vrindavan is so big, and it was the time when we had no money. It was just, and so I was always rushing, doing this, rushing, doing that. And then one of my god sisters came up and she said, don't you care what people think about you? I said, what are you talking about? You know, to me, I was so sincere, taking this big burden, doing all this work. She said, but so-and-so was here and you didn't even hardly say hello to them. It's like, oh, I didn't have time. I was like rushing, you know, but her words stuck in my mind. I thought, oh my God, what are people thinking by the way I'm acting? What to speak of the abruptness I would be talking because I'm in a hurry. And then I started thinking, oh, and now, just because she made that comment to me, I started thinking about it more and more. And there were several times today when somebody did something and I very much wanted to say something like, what did you do that for? And I thought, you know, why say it? What's the good of saying, you know, anyway, I mean, we have to be part of the picture. So the tendency may be there, but better not to act on it. We have so many tendencies that aren't good, right? We're trying to get purified from them. Anyway, I hope that was some type of an answer.
Thank you.
You look like you have a chakra going around your head. You've got the fan over your head, and it looks like the chakra, Lord Krishna's chakra.
Definitely, and I'm really touched. Like, you know, Maharaj, I think you give an example of His Holiness Raghunath Swami Maharaj. Definitely his character resembles that mental quality he had, and it reflects. And many devotees, like, you know, have been telling about his quality. And thank you Mataji, for this. Hare Krishna.
And Prabhupada also, you wouldn't see Prabhupada sit around and talking smack, as they say. I mean, if he had to correct somebody, that's one thing, but it's not like he would just, oh, you know, this guy's like this, and, you know, like a low-class person. Prabhupada was grave. He was a very sober person.
Ramchandra Babu, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it was wonderful to see you here. We met in New Vrindavan some time back, and as Mataji was saying, I'm a witness to that. When I invited Mataji to speak today, she was in the gift shop. The day before, she is doing some other service. The week before, the last time I saw her, she's taking a tour of new people visiting the palace. Then I see her giving Bhagavatam class, and very much an inspiration, and very rightly said that, you know, wherever help is required is where Mataji was. And I really, even before the class, just watching you, just seeing you through my eyes was a lecture for me, and learned a lot of lessons from just watching you, what to speak about, hearing from you. So we'll look forward to seeing you sometime soon, hopefully next month.
Yes, please. We're going to have our 24-hour kirtan. We're going to have our Rath Yatra, and we're going to have our Festival of Colors. So if you need somewhere to go, come to New Vrindavan. We have lots of room.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Okay, no, thank you for inviting me and giving me some service.
Anyone else has a question?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes Srila Prabhupada. Just Mataji, just a quick question about what is the Prabhupada, the views on the competition aspect, especially among the devotees? Maybe can you throw some light on that?
Well, I know that Prabhupada felt that the healthy competition, like for book distribution and stuff like that, that it was good. You know, it's like everyone wants to win. So it's going to make people do more. When they had the marathons back in the day for collecting money in New Vrindavan to build and stuff, the devotees would just, in competition, they would stay out all night just to beat the other people, or, you know, when it becomes negative, like an envious type of thing, or, you know, when it becomes a negative type of thing, that's not a healthy type of competition. It's just like when you play a game, you play Monopoly or something. It can be fun. But when you're in a certain mindset, or someone else is in a certain mindset that they don't want to lose, and, oh, you won, you know, that's something to be avoided. But healthy competition is good. Even the cowherd boys, they would have competition. Oh, I'm going to run and touch Krishna first. No, I'm going to be the first one to touch Krishna. I mean, there is a way to do things in a positive, devotional way.